Hello, and welcome to the Libertarian Show. My name is Aaron, and today I want to talk about a prediction I made that ended up coming true. It was a prediction I made about the Amazon warehouse unionization vote that took place in Alabama last week. In my previous video that was titled The Trouble with Labor Unions, at one point I predicted that the workers at the Amazon warehouse in Alabama would vote against unionization. And I published that video on April 7th, which was the day before the first preliminary voting results were released. Now, the left, the Twitter left and the Reddit left, they were all pushing heavy on the union vote succeeding, and a lot of them were confidently predicting a success for the unionization drive. And I had actually talked with some lefties on the internet, and they were overwhelmingly confident that the vote would succeed. When I told them that I didn't think it would succeed, they mocked me, they laughed. They said I didn't know what I was talking about. Yeah, well, guess what? It turns out that I was right. The very next day after I published that video, on April 8th, the preliminary vote tally came out, and the no votes were leading 2-1 against the yes votes. But they weren't finished counting all the votes. Even then, the writing was on the wall. You're not going to beat a 2-1 lead with over half the votes counted. So the following day, on April 9th, the final results came out. The no votes were 1,700, and the yes votes were only 700. It was an absolute slaughter. It was an absolute blowout against unionizing. Now, it turns out that only 55% of the workers even cast a ballot in the first place. So when you crunch the numbers, it turns out that fewer than 16%, that's 1/6, fewer than 16% of the workers voted yes on unionizing. That is a massacre, all right? In terms of democracy, in terms of a popular vote. That was way more lopsided than I expected. I thought the vote would be a lot closer. I thought the no's were going to succeed. They were going to prevail based on, recent unionization trends in this country in the private sector. But man, it went in my, in favor of my prediction way more than I even expected it would. So that was a big success there on my Nostradamus skills. It follows a trend, though. Like I said, there's a lot of high-profile unionization efforts in the private sector in the United States in the past 5 or 10 years that have been failing spectacularly, and it seems that the failure is more and more lopsided against unionizing with every vote in every new workplace that's happening. The thing is, the reason I think it failed, there were several reasons, but mainly it boils down mostly to the union not doing a good job of selling what they have to offer. They didn't convince the consumer, aka in this case, the workers who would have been the union members. You can't just talk shit about Amazon. I mean, you can, but you have to have more than that if you want to succeed, if you want to make the sale, if you want to close the deal. You have to talk more about positivity. Why is your product better? Why is organizing better? Why is the union better? What is the union going to do that's going to make the worker's life better and make the workplace better, make job security better, make pay better, make benefits better? And will those increased benefits and pay offset the union dues? And the union didn't really emphasize that enough. All right, is what I see. The workers there were some workers that were interviewed and quoted in various news articles, and they're pretty much saying the same thing I'm saying, which is the union didn't really make a case that their life is going to be that much better with organizing, and that they weren't convinced that working for Amazon was as shitty as the union said it was, and they weren't convinced that there would be the adequate increases in benefits and pay to justify the unionization. So it didn't they didn't sell that shit. They didn't make the sale. So the union released a statement saying, hey, we learned from this vote. We're going to keep on fighting. And I thought, I don't think they're going to learn the right lesson. Maybe they will. I hope I'm wrong. I want to see, I kind of do want to see unionization get a fair shake or do better. I don't really have a problem with unions in principle. I do like to gloat when they fail, especially when they're toxic and they're just negative and they talk shit about your employer and they don't really make themselves as valuable as they could be. I like to see that kind of crap fail, but I would like to see a union do a better job at selling itself, try harder at giving more benefits, reducing union dues, improving the lives of the worker, not so much as just demonizing the employer. That's what I would like to see. But will that union will they learn from the result? To me, learning from the result would be to take these lessons to heart about positivity, about emphasizing the benefits of organizing and unionizing. I think that union is not gonna do that. I think that union is gonna double down on their same tactics of demonizing workplaces and talking about some kind of battle. It's like this fight, it's an opposition, it's a struggle. Those are kind of like negative things that I don't think resonate really well with the workers. They're negative, they're not positive. I think if a union wants to attract more members and have more successes in unionizing votes, the union needs to give a positive spin and talk more about the benefits of their union rather than talk about how the workplace, the employer is the next great Satan. That's how it's going to work. And I'm not convinced that these unions are going to learn that lesson. They should. I wish they would, but I'm not going to put my money on them learning those lessons. The pro-union lefties have been saying that this vote proves that the government needs to pass the PRO Act. For those of you who don't know, the PRO Act is some federal legislation taking place, being considered in Washington, D.C. right now, and it's basically a law that's intended to make unions more mandatory. Not like totally mandatory, it just makes it easier to force workers into unions and makes it harder for workers to get out of unions. And it pressures companies more into being forced into bargaining with unions and makes it harder for companies to end negotiation and end contracting with unions. It's kind of like a mandate type of law, and I think that's a chicken shit way out, man. It's like you can't convince the workers. Well, then force it on them. In fact, I saw a lot of leftists on Twitter and Reddit. They were saying things like, "Well, I don't understand how workers can vote against their own self-interest. This is proof. We need to pass the PRO Act." It's like, no, man, they got to check their premises. That is the stupidest, laziest, most ignorant analysis I've ever heard. The workers did not vote against their own interests. That's absurd. What happened when these people say this stuff on the internet? What they're revealing is that they're the ones that are ignorant, and they don't know what the worker's self-interest is. They don't know what's best for the worker, and they don't know what the worker wants the most, and they don't understand it. So then they go, "Oh, the workers vote against their own self-interest." Man, that is ridiculous. The people who said that they're the ones that want to preempt the workers' self-determination. They don't even want the workers to express what their self-interest is. They want to tell the worker what his self-interest should be, and then force their own idea onto the worker, and they want to remove that worker's self-determination. So they want to force all these people on the left, these pro-union zealots, want to force workers to join unions and pay dues. They want to force the employers to bargain with the unions, even during strikes, and forbid them from hiring scabs or replacement workers. That's the type of stuff that's in the PRO Act. And the PRO Act is the kind of legislation that gives unions an extremely unfair advantage. It changes the rules. It makes the playing field very uneven. All right. And the reason the left wants that type of legislation on the books is because they recognize it, at least subconsciously, that today unions are unable to compete in the marketplace in the labor marketplace on a level playing field. The unions are not doing a good job, in the battle for hearts and minds, in the battle of ideas. So here's the thing, assuming that the PRO Act does not pass, and assuming that unions don't start improving their marketing skills and giving a more positive message like I went over previously. Assuming those things don't happen, then I predict that there are going to be many more, not exclusively, but there's going to be a lot more high-profile unionization efforts that fail, and probably fail spectacularly. It's going to be a bloodbath. All right, that's what's going to happen. The unions need to improve the message that they're putting out. They need to do a better job at explaining what the benefits are of unionizing. And it's not going to help them really in terms of winning hearts and minds if they just rely on legislation to like force it down everyone's throats. People are going to resent that. And overall, if you force unionization on the workforce, overall, what you're going to result in is you're going to have employers that are going to be more reluctant to hire. You're gonna have higher costs of production for goods and services, and that's going to result in consumers paying more to get less. Ultimately, is what's going to happen. That's what I see happen if you force this with legislation. If you ram it down the workplace's throat, and what happens when consumers pay more for less products? You have a reduction in the quality of life, or at least a retardation of the improvement in quality of life that would otherwise take place if products and services cost less and were more accessible to the consumers. I go into more detail about that in my previous video that was called The Trouble with Labor Unions. You can see it in my video, in my channel history. Check that one out because that one gives more context to this, which is essentially a follow-up video that I just did. Anyway, that's about it. Thanks for watching.